Meta goes on to say, for there to be a market, there must be something of value to exchange. But none of the author's works has economic value individually as training data. Hunter, you're going to have to believe this. That!
They might be self-aware.
Coming at you live from wherever you may be, because you're listening to us in a variety of places all over the world. But we are also somewhere else. I'm Daniel Bishop, and this over here is
Hunter Powers.
Wow.
I actually don't know where I am right now.
Metaverse, universe, multiverse.
All of the shades are drawn, so I'm very unclear.
Full on programmer cave. You don't even know what day it is outside.
Yeah, I love the cave. I'm definitely one of those like go into the dark cool room and cold room. And just code all day.
For those of you watching, I painted this wall like a deep green, like forest green or whatever back here, just because I guess I want my little dark cave to go do my programming in. I don't know if it's just a knee-jerk reaction to having been in like way overly brightly lit offices with like too many people coming and going and talking. I'm like, I just want a box that's dark and I can barely see my computer screen in front of me, and I'm just going to scrunch up and do my work there. What I want is a waterproof laptop and one of those float tanks. That's like you're neutrally buoyant.
The
like
salt ones.
Deprivation. Yeah. And it's like there's no light, there's no noise. It's just the floating screen in front of me and a keyboard and no distractions.
Well, I have this.
That's the dream.
I literally live at the beach. If I were to open these windows, I can see the waves crashing. But I just spend all
podcasting with me instead of like surfing.
And I spend all my time with all of the shades drawn in this dark room. So I had the darkest tent you could get installed on the windows so that I could put my shades up sometimes and not just be blinded by the light and glance out and see a wave every now and then.
You went to a tent shop and rolled up your house and you said,
that's exactly what I did.
Dark. I want non-road legal.
Yeah, this is way over the top. Really, really, really dark tent, but it works. Complete non sequitur, but it's something.
One of our best segues yet.
Yeah, no, this is not. I'm going to dismiss this segue. But I was thinking about, would you sell your likeness rights? Is that? I mean, you're not like a Hollywood star. If someone came up to you and said, "Yeah, Daniel, let me give you, I don't know, $1,000, $2,000, $10,000. That's the number. And let's just start with your voice.
Is it in perpetuity? Do I get a percentage of income?
No. 10 grand. 10 grand. So here's what I'm asking you to do. I want you to read this thing. It's going to take you about 5 minutes to read.
Right.
And then we're allowed to use your voice. But you get 10 grand. Do you care? Or are you doing that?
Is it like a advertising firm?
You never really know. I mean, it's some company that's approaching you, but you never really. I mean, even if it was a company, it was your beloved Anthropic, but you don't really know where that's going to end up. So I don't think the company matters. The question is, would you license your voice?
This is, I think, toward the crux of like the matter for the creative industry. There are a lot of people who are, I think, very, very rightfully worried about what's going to happen to their jobs in the future. AI extras being inserted into scenes instead of people who might be using that as their first foot in the door to the entertainment biz themselves. And so if I say I want to be like a voice actor, I want to be doing audiobooks, and also maybe I'm going to be, shilling for like weird snake oily stuff on the side. That's not you. Associated with that.
You're not you're a podcaster. You're not a professional voiceover artist. I'm assuming you don't have any huge ambitions to.
I recorded a company's like welcome, like the interactive voice system. I did that once.
I get that. So
you're
a hard no.
I have a voice.
Your IQ $10,000. $10,000. I need you to read this for 5 minutes. And
no, I want some legal recourse of some sort if like my voice ends up being used anyways, because it's fairly easy to clone someone's voice or frankly even likeness with all of the tools that are out there these days. And some episodes ago, we talked about a couple of like voice actors that ended up hearing their voices, or other actors that saw themselves in things. And more of this is happening where it isn't without their permission. It is with their permission. They're just not happy about where it's going. I don't want that happening to me, where if it is unauthorized use, at least maybe I could sue some sort of company. At least I could say with a straight face to anyone, I did not authorize this. This is illegitimate use of my likeness. But if I get $10,000 or $1,000 or whatever, and then all of a sudden I'm selling, off-brand purses on a billboard in Shanghai or whatever, like I don't want that to have happened. Could it happen anyways illegally? Sure, I guess it could kind of happen to pretty much anyone for anything at this point. There's enough video and audio of me on just YouTube that you could totally train something at this point. But it'd at least be illegal. Just please don't go to Shanghai anytime soon, or you might be slightly surprised at some of the billboards you see. Perfumes. Yeah. I don't know.
And I ask this because these companies are standing up that are basically going around and licensing and not just actors, but everyday people, because user generated content is such a craze, and it seems like it's only going to continue, where we prefer to see normal people selling us stuff rather than the professional spokesperson. I want to see the person that seems just more like, an average dude. And he's like,
Is this me about to launch into our first paid ad, Hunter? This episode is brought to you by so-and-so VPN. No. Would you trust? Hey, in the comments, let me know if you'd trust me on any, let's call it like class of goods. Are there any large conglomerates that I should be reaching out to where you say, if Daniel sold me that, I'd trust him on it. Consumer Reports, to hell with that. Daniel Reports. Here's something that I bought that I like, or that I was sent, that I am being paid to say that I like.
I don't know.
I want to be one of those YouTubers who's like, and here's 50 kinds of prepackaged ramen, and this is my favorite one. I don't want to go down that path. Really expensive electronics. Hey, Apple, if you're listening and you want to send me a maxed out M4 128 gigs of unified RAM, I'll review the crap out of that thing for you.
Getting back to the story, actors more than anything else have been the ones taking advantage of these opportunities where, it's like $1,000 to $2,000 to
not George Clooney's. We're talking
we're going to scan you, we're going to take your voice, and now they're finding themselves popping up in all of these different ads across the internet, advertising all sorts of things. Now there is a past. You mentioned George Clooney. George Clooney has appeared in many ads, and young actors' careers, they often are advertising things, and they're often go outside of the United States where it's more socially acceptable that George Clooney is advertising a pair of jeans or Brad Pitt is advertising a pair of jeans. It just didn't exist in the United States. So it is sort of an extension of something that already existed, though they were more aware of it. And now these people selling their identities and then showing up everywhere. In the article, it compared it to a Black Mirror episode, but I think that's probably, that's actually like pretty fair. I can see that. But
if somebody, so looking at the article, one person signed up, he got $1,000 to give his face and voice to a company for 1 year. And then his mom found videos where he was appearing as a doomsayer predicting disasters, or someone else was, their voice and face ended up becoming an AI avatar that's selling questionable health cures on TikTok and Instagram. I don't want to be selling snake oil. And I think it is tough for someone who's trying to make it in the business to say, I can be paid for, if you really stretch the term, for some acting, for some selling of goods and services. Is that you making it as an actor, or is it just like, I need to put some food on the table? Yes, you do have to put some of that food on the table, but what is this leading to? And I think just like last episode, we were talking about how traditional education might be seeing a large upending, and like kids doing homework is going to have to change. The traditional entryway into entertainment by way of like, I was on a Law and Order episode, I was an extra in this, I did some small commercials. I think a lot of that is going to, if not go away, certainly be highly disrupted. A lot of, junior programmers, those jobs aren't popping into existence as much because you're expecting your mids and your seniors to do more work with like AI tooling. The pipeline for people to be in any industry, I think, is being disrupted. And this is just another show of it hasn't happened yet, but there's like a weird faltering step toward people being devalued, people not being able to do the thing that they want because of these tools. In general, I'm very bullish about this technology as like a net benefit for mankind ultimately. And there's environmental concerns and so on that absolutely need addressing. But AI, I think, is going to help us.
Well, I mean, and the good news is that, all of this video that you're producing and putting out of your image and your voice, right, it's all copywritten, and you technically own that copyright. And there's basically
super respected by everybody.
Yeah, there's zero chance that any AI model will ever train on this data. And there's zero chance that while you may not be able to say, generate someone that looks like Daniel Bishop, you probably will be able to say, generate someone that looks like they were on an AI podcast that was talking about self-awareness, and have them sell this hemorrhoid cream.
Right. Just like people using ChatGPT and Dolly to say, like, I won't make Mario, but I will make a plumber in red suspenders and kind of cartoonish and got a hat with an M on it.
Yeah, that's never going to happen. You don't have to worry about that at all, because all of these large language models respect all copyright, and they think that there's a lot of value.
I have to go completely in agreement with you on that one. I do think, actually, that pretty much all the major players are being sued for exactly that over and over and over.
No, they understand that all the value is coming from this copywritten material, and that really is like 80% of their value is the copywritten material. They get that.
Let's talk about some specifics, I think, on this. There is a legal set of a bunch of books that you could get in corners of the internet. It's called LibGen, and it's just like so many books. It's all the books. And Meta used it. For sure, they used it. There's plenty of internal communications where they say, in quotes here, in no case would we disclose publicly that we had trained on LibGen. However, there is practical risk external parties could deduce our use of this data set. Okay. So they used the illegal data to help train one of their various llama models, they being Meta in this case. And there's an ongoing suit. It's Richard Kadri et al. Versus Meta Platforms. It's a bunch of authors saying, you used our stuff without permission. And Meta says, so what? It's not worth anything. What?
That's not.
What do you mean? Well, a single book would adjust the large language model's performance by less than 0.06% on industry standard benchmarks. A meaningless change. No different from noise. Again, what? Okay, yes, if you remove one book from the dataset, maybe it's a tiny bit less smart, but that means that each individual book is contributing to this thing's overall knowledge of the world. There's a reason why we have kids in school read a bunch of like the classics, is because there's this cultural sort of soup that we all are a part of, cultural references and so on that everyone's at least been kind of exposed to, and they are exposing the large language model to all of this various stuff. Meta goes on to say, for there to be a market, there must be something of value to exchange, but none of the author's works has economic value individually as training data. Hunter, you're going to have to believe this. Fuck that! This is absolute nonsense. I get that this is a lawsuit and they have to try and defend themselves, but like, come on. If this wasn't valuable, why are they using it as training data?
It is a new argument, an interesting argument. Usually they would say...
a bad, dumb argument.
That, well, humans could read the books and they learn things, and, you don't then tax them forever because they read your book.
They bought the book. Or they got it from the library.
Sure. And that's kind of what they did. They got it from the library. Of the Pirate Bay. The Pirates Library.
The Pirates Library.
Yeah.
I'm furious at Meta over this. there has to be.
But wait.
Equitable.
Isn't everyone else doing this too? And everyone else.
And
Okay.
everyone,
Yeah. It's their lawsuit, but
this article here is specifically about
this is an open secret.
Yes, but right, like it's not just that they're using it illegally. It's also that they're saying books don't matter. They're worth nothing. Yes, they are. They super duper. And there has to be some sort of future where there is it profit sharing? Is it this? Is it that? There has to be money going back to the people who made the thing. Just like, and I know we've talked about this in some episodes, for the image generators, there should be something where everybody on DeviantArt and Instagram and this and that and the other thing should be able to sign up and like, is it a cryptocurrency or something? Probably. And like you get 10 zillionths of a cent every time somebody makes an image. But still, there should be credit where it's due. And I think you said an interesting thing with like, it was like going to the library. Sure, we have libraries where you don't have to pay to check out and read a book and get the knowledge from it and so on. But also large electronic libraries that just have unlimited checkouts and so on, that has not been deemed to be legal. This is not a legal way of using this material. Granted, I'm not the lawyers, I'm not the judge, and so we'll find out, legally speaking.
So if they had bought the books
way after the damage has been done, if this ultimately was illegal or not, I don't think this is fair use.
Wait. If they purchased the books, you're okay with it? You're more okay with it? If they at least bought one copy of each book?
I guess. I mean, like, my outrage, dare I say, about this is that they are illegally using this. They have not paid for access to it. And I think there should be a difference between one person buys a book and gets a sort of benefit from it versus one person buys one book and then makes it available sort of to everybody else. A very specific example of this is that you're just not allowed to have like a restaurant with a TV on or radio or like Spotify, legally speaking, without paying money. There's like whole companies who license out music to the stakeholders, whatever, the people who own the music. And you have to pay that intermediary company a bunch of money to just have a radio where people are allowed to listen to it in your bar or whatever. Or if you're going to have the TV on, there's companies. It's not just me buying direct TV. I have to pay a whole other company that handles the rights for all of this stuff to make sure you're allowed to show it. Now, not everyone does that, but they're then doing illegal things. And so Meta, I don't think they have to buy one copy of every book. I think they have to, it's some sort of ongoing, amount of money going back and forth.
I think ASCAP is
Washington Post and New York Times and all, Penguin publisher, Penguin House, Random House, Penguin Random House publishers, whoever it is.
Sure.
Yeah, Random Penguin House publishers, and so on and so on. And you know what? We've seen this start happening already. Your OpenAIs and, believe it or not, Metas and so on of the world have started having agreements with especially like large book and newspaper type publishers to say, we're going to integrate into your platform and we'll even give you some cool features that you can put on your website. And by virtue of doing this, you now understand we have legal access to all of your backlog and so on, which they had already trained on, but at least now the company's getting something for it.
One of the key differentiations between the music example and this is that in general, these large language models are not reproducing the work. Where when you are broadcasting the recording, you are reproducing it to all of the people around you's ears. Although even this, I think, is a little bit of a scam. I think it's like one of the things that these large language model providers stand behind. Well, we're not reproducing the copywritten work. We're creating derivative works, based upon the knowledge or the weights that we derived from it. But the reality is, as these models have gotten better and better, they can reproduce the exact work. It's just that there's a little line in their configuration that says, please don't output the original work. But when you figure out the jailbreak to get around that,
or small chunks,
it's all in there.
Recognizably from this thing. Yeah.
It's in there. They can. They are completely capable of reproducing the exact copywritten work. It's just they've been told not to. And so most of the times they won't give you the exact thing. Right. But it's not that they don't have it. It's not that they can't do it. It's just that most times they won't because they've been asked nicely not to. Someone said, please.
Just like anyone else that's going to be performing in a public space or sending out other copywritten works or whatever in a public space, I think that we do ultimately need something like that for large language models, AI in general, shall we say, of if there is a training on a tremendous amount of copywritten material that made this thing and it's going to be accessible to pretty much everybody, there should be some sort of payment back and forth. And not just a one-time. I mean, shoot, it's between the other companies to determine for themselves. But I would imagine this is not a one-time payment sort of thing. And the agreements that I've seen thus far, and it's usually in the news as OpenAI has done it, are ongoing contracts back and forth. We'll make sure that we have access to this and you get our features or whatever.
Yeah, I think the most interesting contracts are the ones where it's around getting more real-time data.
Yeah.
Licensing.
I do also wonder if we get toward self-awareness, wink, and we start looking at personhood for AI models. A person, a human meat person, does not have to pay a publisher every time they think about that book that they read a while ago. They just have to buy it the one time or check it out from the library and so on. Just because a large language model is better at spitting out large chunks of text at a time or something. Like if we start getting toward we have to ascribe personhood to these models, does that change everything that I was just describing of like this abstract system ingests and outputs stuff and we just need to make sure the people who made the things that it had been trained on get money? Does that then become, it's a person and it checked out every book from every library
right.
and read them, and that's how it formed its mind?
The robot literally walks into the library and goes in during the normal working hours and over the period of 3 years reads every single book and then goes out and starts a company.
Sure,
based on that knowledge.
It's the same model, the same robot that then goes out to 1,000 libraries and reads everything over one day. And
sure.
Now it's got all of it. Like, is there a difference between that being and a person being allowed to read a book and understand what was in it and tell people about the book that it read?
Well, yes, there's a difference because it's not a person, and the leverage that it has, the scale that it can operate at is not the same scale that a human, an individual can. So it's absolutely different.
Let me go in the opposite direction here. Weird thought experiment.
Yeah.
We hook you, Hunter, up to a whole bunch of electrodes and whatever else, and you're in some cool techno chair.
Sounds like
and
a Friday night.
Your face shows up in every bar across America, and you're well aware via one of those tubes going into your head of the sports game that's on. There's a big football game, and you know it, and you're giving a play-by-play of that to everybody.
Okay.
Should you have to pay ESPN or the NFL or whatever money to be broadcasting it to every bar in America, all of that information?
I think that is something
just
that's
stuff
legislated. Like you can report on it. You can't show any footage of it, but yeah, you are allowed to report on it, the event and live, and it can be a pay-per-view event. Basically now companies just broadcast all of their like big events and keynotes live to everyone on YouTube and every other platform they can. But before that, they would invite the select group of people to a meeting, and they would hold their own sort of private feeds where you could watch like the famous like Apple keynotes with Steve Jobs, etc. And they tried to tightly control this, and people would try to like rebroadcast it with their own commentary because that generated a lot of traffic. And they would get taken down very, very quickly. But as long as you didn't broadcast any of the original material, you're just commenting on it. That is legal. That's fair. That's fair use of the material. So yes,
I do not envy the lawyers and I do not envy the judges and the juries and so on in this case, because it feels so wrong to me that you could say a large language model is just allowed to read all of the books and not give anyone a dime for it. Because people worked to make those works, and there should be recompense for somebody benefiting from it. That's kind of how the current economic model works. And if you say certain things are allowed to just steal everything and then benefit from it and let everyone else benefit to the stealing company's benefit, boy, that sure doesn't sit right with me. There has to be a solution. I don't know what. I think, frankly, it's close to what OpenAI is doing, where they're just, okay, yes, we won't say that we all erase all your information, but of course we stole it. At least we'll now give you some sort of monthly.
We'll give a very small percentage of people a payment, and you agree to the payment or not, we're using your material regardless. Like, it feels
that's extortion, basically.
It feels very just PR-y to me. The payments.
It's the closest thing that I've seen to anything vaguely equitable at this point, but like, it's obviously not enough or correct. It's more correct than we're just going to steal it and then say books have no economic value.
Well, you mentioned the legal system's going to have to ultimately litigate this. And I'm surprised they haven't litigated it more. I mean, I guess they are. There's lawsuits going on nonstop, but we haven't gotten to the end of any of them. But there's another rumor going around that some of these AI agents are now literally writing parts of the bar exam. Have you heard this one?
Right. So a while ago, one of the things that was being touted about the OpenAI models was it scores X% on the bar exams, bar exams, to show like how capable it is about what is supposed to be a fairly complex task for humans, an expert sort of task. Now it's not even just passing them with colors, flying or otherwise. It's writing them.
Yeah, in California, I guess they've now disclosed that some of the questions on the test, and I guess there's a whole sort of process where you propose a question and then it goes through a lot of review and criticism before it gets approved. So it's not as if ChatGPT is literally in real time writing the bar exam as you're taking it.
There's panels, there's subject matter experts that look at the questions before it actually gets onto the test.
Now.
Sure, right. 2 years from now, it's Claude 4.5. That's going to be
large language model as judge. That's the inevitable
jury
outcome
and
here.
Executioner. I've seen that movie.
I am the law.
23 out of 171 multiple choice questions were helped with AI. Is it that somebody was trying to like come up with just better wording? Is it that he said, here's all the existing questions, help fill in conceptual spaces in the rest of the California legal code? I don't know what that looked like. Also, I don't care. We've talked so many times about everybody in every workplace is and or should be using these tools to make everything better, more efficient, more higher quality, whatever. If you have a multiple choice question set and some of those were better worded, reworded, completely generated out of whole cloth by AI, as long as you then check and make sure like C is the actual answer, and A, B, and D were reasonable other choices to have in there, why not let it do that? I don't know. I feel like the article, because that says it sparked an uproar. My uproar is that this is not worth an uproar. There's no uproar. You used a large language model in exactly the way that they're supposed to be used.
Yeah, well, except that large language model was trained on all those copywritten books that you are now going to. You're allowing it's a conflict of interest.
Separate thing.
Isn't it a conflict of interest to allow the very thing that you are litigating to be also the thing that is defining whether you are allowed to litigate it?
Yeah. Maybe once the AI is totally self-aware, that becomes a subtly, managed process to keep humans from being able to ever be lawyers again. But thus far, if the tool does exist, and it does, and there are legal problems with it, and those are currently worming their way through the courts, but still, if the tool exists and you're not availing yourself of these various tool sets to help with this exact kind of thing, I think you're putting yourself at a disservice. If I want to make a multiple choice test and I know what the kinds of things are supposed to be on it, it's easy enough to prompt a large language model and say, look, here's questions 1, 2, 3, 4. I need 6 more questions. And this is the stuff that we've been learning in class recently or whatever. And then here's just like a PDF dump of the education code that I'm supposed to make sure that we're hitting all of these milestones. Come up with appropriate other questions for me. The way that large language models work, this is like such a perfect use for them. If this wasn't being checked by people, if this didn't go through review after review after review, then I would probably feel a little iffier about it. But it's being reviewed. It was also
for now.
There's a Supreme Court directive to explore new technology for testing reliability and efficiency. Okay, they're doing it. And yes, you say for now, of course it will get more and more automated over time. But it would hardly be, you don't want it to be this test, but it would hardly be the first test that's ever been given with like a weird wrong answer on it. Obviously, I don't want the bar exam to have that. There should always be a lot of checks for the really important ones like that. But the fact that AI was used to help or even fully make some of the multiple choice questions that are checked and made sure that they are correct kinds of questions to ask with the right answers, so what? I can't get worked up about this being a bad thing.
Well, I think it's the question of everyone I think is more or less okay with this, but it's the question of where are we going?
Uproar, according to the article.
The uproar is about where are we going, and are we going to the point where AI will be the judge for? I mean, we've talked about this before. That for misdemeanor offenses, like you just go in front of the AI. You never go in front of a human. And are we okay with that idea that technology would be the decider of our fates rather than we want our fate to be decided by other humans? And what does that mean? And if we get to the point where, any misdemeanor offenses, if you want to go to trial for that, you are just going to be going in front of that new Perplexity voice assistant who will be the judge. And some of the jury, if we can get some humans in that day, you might have a human on there, but it's just going to be, you'll have Claude 3.5 will be there, and Gemini 2.5 Pro.
Robots, one of the robot dogs, and Jim.
Yeah, we'll sit up there because it's a misdemeanor offense, and we've decided that. And if we decide that for a misdemeanor offense, then it's only a matter of time before felonies and grand juries are legislated by technology, opposed to enriched by technology. And I don't think that there's any reason to think that we won't get there unless and if we don't want to get there, that we should probably draw the line really early on, because otherwise it feels a little inevitable to me.
It feels inevitable to me as well. And I think I do share a lot of those same concerns as it relates to like AI judges and so on. I have a lot of concerns about human judges too. You could be the wrong color of skin from the judge's perspective, and then boy, you're in for a really rough sentencing. The judge could be sexist. The judge could be hungry. There's studies that show, hey, right before lunch, you're more likely to get a harsher penalty and sentencing and so on than right after lunch. That's not great. And of course, all of these models have bias built into them, and depending on the political leanings and who's paying what and so on, certain models are probably going to have very specific thoughts about whatever they've been forced to have opinions about. And I think we're going to do a whole episode later about some of Anthropic learnings of what Claude has as its like moral ethos. Very interesting stuff there, but that's for another day. As it relates to like judges and so on, in an ideal world, I think an AI is the absolute correct judge to have, because it could be impartial and consistent and actually read every piece of legislation that could be relevant to the case and cite 100,000 cases before it. And like, this is exactly what should happen in these circumstances. But there's so much human bias that gets into these of like, we need to make sure the AI doesn't end up racist. We need to make sure that the AI doesn't accidentally internalize my internal clock says it's 11:30. I need to do harsher penalties. Like, that's metadata you don't want it learning from. There's so much work that would have to be done to make an AI judge effective and idealized and whatever. But we already don't do that for humans. I think what's going to happen is we're going to see AI judges with all the flaws and bumps and rough edges, no matter what.
Is there any job that you think we should keep AI away from? AI should never take this one job. Every other job it can have, but this one job, you know, the Pope just passed. Or are we going to have an AI Pope? Is that...
Oh my God. Okay, yeah, I'll go on the record and say the Pope probably shouldn't be a large language model. As funny as that idea is to me, and it's really funny, I don't think 4.0 makes for a good direct line to God, depending on your religious leanings or not. I really like using Claude to help out with coding problems. I don't think that it should be the absolute authority of heaven on earth. So yes, in terms of jobs, let's say Pope is...
That's the right one job that no to AI.
Pope. Maybe whoever's in charge of launching nuclear weapons, because like there's that, you'll never know if it was really real or not, but supposedly back in like World War II, there was a weather balloon that a Russian sub guy said, oh, that was the nukes launched, and he refused to launch the nukes and the world was saved. It makes for a good story. Whether or not it's actually true, who knows? But like, I don't know if I would just want sensor reading says this, immediately launch nukes. Let's not put that on a fully automated system is probably another job that I don't want AI having.
Okay.
I don't like, can you think of a job that you don't want a large language model to do? And like, we're going to wash away the economic disruption in the societal, like if all jobs go away, what do we do? Something UBI, fine. But a job that is fundamentally inappropriate for a large language model / AI / robot / whatever to do. I guess escort is probably among them.
Well, I think the question is more...
And not to everybody, probably, as well.
Conceptually, on a long enough timeline, AI can do every job better than any human can do. Conceptually,
back to the AGI versus ASI.
Singularity, blah, blah, blah. But are there some jobs like a judge, like a police officer, where you want the humanity to be there? You want a human, a real human, to be the person making the decision, as flawed as it is. That like that's an important part of our humanity. And if we remove all the humanity and it is just ones and zeros or weights for everything, are we really still alive? If all you do every day in going around in society are interacting with ones and zeros, are you really interacting? Are you really? Is it like, are we just making the simulation? There's the question of, are we already in the simulation, but are we actively just making a simulation to live in by replacing every single bloody profession with a model?
If you take away everything we have to do, all that's left is the things that we want and get to do. And so if, like, I do think that there is again, knee-jerk reaction of, this doesn't sound great to have all of the cops in the world get replaced with robots. I'd say the other side of the coin is there are a lot of people that live in fear of the police to this day. And I don't just mean like criminals. There are a lot of people who are very badly mistreated by police. It could be people of certain ethnicities. It could be in certain cities. It could be this. It could be that. There are a lot of folks that don't have a great rapport with the police through no fault of their own. If you were to have something that has been smoothed out, it's an AI and it's been trained on, here is what the laws are you going to see someone who gets pulled over for driving while the wrong color anymore? No, because the AI would, this is literally not a law being broken, off you go, citizen. I think a lot of misuse of power that humans have would go away if the humans aren't in charge of that power anymore.
But then, I mean, you're ultimately arguing
robot
for
firefighter. I mean, like, so there's negative feelings that a lot of people have with police, not everyone and not all police, etc. But no one ever has anything bad to say about firefighters. But also firefighters, despite being, I'd say arguably some of the best people because of like what they do, have human capabilities. If we had a robot firefighter that was able to withstand higher temperatures for longer, had an internal gas suppression, whatever thing, like if there was the firefighter of the future, wouldn't it be better if using the robot firefighters led to less deaths from fires, led to less property damage because you got the fire taken care of faster, or it could get to the scene faster? Why not use that? If you had robot doctors that could do more fine-grained, tiny little cuts so that your sutures heal faster, or there's less infections because it's not some guy with his grubby human hands. I know they're wearing gloves usually, but like still the point is, if it was robot doctors that across the board, every specific illness, all of them, it could do better. Why wouldn't you replace doctors then with the AI doctors? And so on and so on and so forth. I think you're correct to be saying it's the human judgment side. So you mentioned police, you mentioned lawyers and judges. So maybe where you want to have a human and their potential empathy affecting the outcome is where you don't want to replace those jobs yet. But all the other ones.
I think it's because you're in doing that, you're ultimately creating a simulation. And I don't want to live in a simulation. I want to live in the real world. And the real world is deeply flawed. And I don't know, I would rather live in the real world and the deeply flawed world than a simulation where, again, I'm the vast majority of the time, I'm just interacting with these various models, doing things, and that I've more or less ceded my autonomy to them. I want to at least have the illusion that I am retaining my autonomy and that it is other humans in charge. It's not the technology in charge. And I mean, we're not even going down the route of
so far removed from you on a day-to-day basis. The laws may have been written 50 years ago. Maybe the people who did that aren't even alive anymore. You probably won't have to meet too many judges in your life, let alone higher court judges or the Supreme Court justices. There's so much of what you're describing as a lack of autonomy or living in a simulation that so much of the world exists and churns and does stuff without you being miles, figuratively or literally, from it. You're driving your Tesla Cybertruck, and the cobalt used in the batteries probably came from kid miners in the Democratic Republic of the Congo or wherever. And you didn't interact directly with them. You didn't interact with any of 13 points on the supply chain to there. That company that was using those kids to mine the thing to then go to a different company to refine it to this, like autonomy, nothing. If that was all done by AI, by robots instead of by humans, you still would end up getting the same product at the end, but maybe with less child labor, for example. How could that not be better?
Because if the goal is perfection, so humans aren't perfection, then the goal is not to be human.
Well, no, the humans get to do all the human stuff at that point. The work goes away. Those kids don't want to be miners. People who are flipping burgers for a living probably aren't super thrilled about having to. Some people, I'm sure, find a lot of self-actualization for making the ideal burger, but probably most people are just there because they need a paycheck to keep food on the table. If you took away all those jobs, if we get to the post-scarcity utopia where everyone has enough.
The post-suffering.
Right. We get to a point where everyone has a home and electricity and clean water and food and shelter and this and that, because people aren't doing any of the jobs anymore. How is that not better? You'd have more time for art, even if robots can do better art. Fine. But you'd be able to make your own things. You'd be able to spend more time with community and make human connections instead of be forced many hours a day to do drudgery or
maybe
whatever it is. I think that could make us all a little more I'll make you say it.
Self-aware. Another episode has come to its inevitable conclusion, but the conversation shall continue on.
Where?
And, well, wherever you are listening, because we're on twice a week. We'll be back in just a few more days with the next inevitable story. The 15 stories that will continue to evolve this conversation and progress us towards the inevitable future that we are deeply uncertain about.
Hunter, thank you very much. This has been a good one.
Hit the subscribe button. Give us a like. Give us a dislike if you really dislike it, but we like those likes a little bit more.
Maybe not that one. Yeah,
and leave a comment. Tell us what you're thinking. We do try to respond to every comment, and we do bring those thoughts here to the show to discuss. You are a part of this program right here on...
They might be self-aware.